"We're back," growled Zed as he and his crew drove away from the smoking remains of the Machine Empire. He and Rita had plans to invade Earth once again, this time with the help of reinforcements from Master Vile. In a few days, their forces were assembled and they prepared to strike on Angel Grove. The Rangers countered with their Zeo powers. One by one, though, each Zord fell. Before long, Rita and Zed had decimated the Rangers. It was looking bad. Rito and Goldar were about to breach the command center. The command center shook as giant monsters attacked from outside, trying to break in. Zordon and Alpha began to send out distress signals, hoping an ally may hear their call and come to help. Suddenly, everything was quiet. The Rangers were weak and wounded. The Zords laid in heaps of twisted metal. All of the monsters had disappeared. What had happened? Zed and Rita rode in Serpentera, surveying the site below. They watched as Rito, Goldar, and Scorpina led an army of monsters. They laughed and clinked some glasses of slime. Rita suddenly doubled over. Zed asked in concern, "What's wrong, my queen?" Rita whispered something in his ear, and he stood straight and alert. He nervously looked around before calling his forces and telling them to stand down and fall back. He rushed back to the palace and found Finster. "I need your help. It's Rita. It's time." Finster nodded understandingly. Hours later, Zed was sitting in his throne, slumped down low. Squat and Babu chattered with each other. Scorpina, Goldar, and Rito all stood at attention. Just then, Finster called to Zed. He shot up and ran to him. The other monsters stood still and watched. Zed entered a small room. Rita lay in bed. She held out her hand, and Zed took it in his own. Outside, the monsters waited. Rito spoke up. "What do you think it'll be? Boy, girl, or something else?" After some time, Finster came out and told everyone they could come in. Zed sat next to her, and even though his face was unable to be seen, a smile showed through. Rita held out her baby so everyone could see. "Aw, he's real cute, sis," Rita exclaimed. "What are you gonna name him?" Rita sighed and laid her head back. "I let Zeddy settle on a name." Zed picked up a nearby book and opened a bookmarked page. He pointed to an illustration of an ancient evil warlord. "I've decided to name him Thrax, a cunning and wicked warrior who led the Tengas eons ago." The monsters all agreed it was a perfectly horrible name. Down on Earth, the Rangers regrouped at the command center. The Zords were wrecked, their powers weakened, and the computers in the power chamber were damaged. Alpha was trying his best, but without Billy, fixing everything was going slow. Zordon had no way of knowing why Rita and Zed had suddenly stopped their assault. The Rangers simply hoped that maybe Zed and Rita wouldn't attack again, and that Earth wouldn't face any other evil space aliens soon. Up on the moon, Thrax aged quickly, being the son of magic parents. Finster became his babysitter and tried to teach him how to sculpt clay. Thrax couldn't create monsters, but he was adept at recreating his father's iconic Z. One day, or night, hard to tell on the moon, Thrax took a walk out on the moon's surface. He came across something embedded in the ground. It was his mother's space dumpster. He was small enough to climb inside. As the weeks went on, Thrax enjoyed going out and playing in that dumpster. On a particularly fateful day, Thrax was in the dumpster when he heard something unusual overhead. He watched as a ship came bursting out of a warp in space. He stared in amazement, not even realizing that he was being lifted off the ground in the dumpster. As soon as he felt the weightlessness, he popped the cover on the dumpster just in time. He was picked up by an unknown force and spun through space and disappeared through the warp the ship just came through. Thrax couldn't open the dumpster, it had sealed itself tight. He had no idea how much time had passed before he felt the dumpster crash. He was too scared to open it at first. Where could he have ended up? He heard voices outside and pushed on the cover. Whoever was outside helped pry the cover off. Eventually, the cover was released and he shielded his eyes from the light. A pair of feathered hands reached in and pulled him out. Slowly, Thrax opened his eyes and saw a somewhat familiar face. It was a Tenga. He'd seen them before. His parents had a bunch of them along with putties. These ones were different, though. When they spoke, they sounded intelligent. The Tengas were a warrior society and taught Thrax to be a soldier. He acclimated quickly. Occasionally, he'd think back to his family, far off somewhere else in another time. He had no idea what time he was in. The Tengas didn't keep records of that kind of thing. He used the sculpting skills Finster taught him to make a staff like his father's. When Thrax was old enough, the Tengas allowed him to go on a mission. The Tengas were working with a warlord to steal land. Thrax and his team were successful, and Thrax went on more missions. He rose through the ranks until he was at the top. At such a high rank, he was now allowed to be shown secrets of Tenga society. A Tenga shaman showed him to a hidden room in their temple. It was a spacious room with art carved into the walls, and a single podium in the center. On it was an egg. The shaman explained to Thrax that an ancient prophecy told that if the Tenga were ever in danger, the egg would hatch into an invincible savior, Vulturus. It was only to be used as a last resort, as the prophecy also said that taking the egg before it hatched would harm the Tenga. Thrax had grown cold over the years. The Tenga had been nice to him, treated him like one of their own, but he held no loyalty to them. He wanted to go off on his own and become a warlord himself. Thrax's parents wondered where he went. They searched the moon and they found the crater where the space dumpster was. Finster had a device that told them a time warp had opened recently. Thrax was lost in time. While thinking of a solution, Finster searched through his books and found the history of the warlord Thrax. The realization hit him. This was their Thrax. The book told that Thrax received a vision from the future. They then looked for a way to contact him. Time passed. Rita and Zed were called away by Dark Spectre. They took part in his galactic invasion, leading an army of monsters just like the good old days. Off an Astronema's ship, Andros shattered Zordon's energy tube, releasing a wave of purifying energy. Rita and Zed were hit by it and became human. They danced in joy, but remembered their son. He needed to know how it felt to be good. Rita retained her magic powers, and a whole new world of good magic opened to her. Zed, meanwhile, became an archaeologist and found a time crystal. Combined with Rita's magic, the time crystal allowed them to open a channel to Thrax. Thrax was startled awake on a barren planet. A circle of light opened before him. Two people appeared. They were familiar, but strange to him. "Who are you?" he inquired. "We're your parents. We wanted to tell you how good it is to not be evil." Thrax was shocked and looked at them in disgust.
"Not be evil?" he screamed. "Evil is the only way I know. It's the only way I want to know."
Rita and Zed asked him to reconsider, but Thrax just pulled out the staff he'd made as a child. He pointed at them.
"I'll be more evil than you two ever could. I'll destroy all good in the universe."
Rita and Zed tried once more to reach him, but he blasted a wave of energy at them, breaking their connection. Thrax went to his Tenga army and told them he received a vision from the future. He needed a way to go into the future and restore evil. The Tenga shamans read through their archives and found tales of a being called the Sentinel Knight. He was a mysterious warrior, but there was a sword Excelsia that could defeat him. With his power, Thrax could travel through time. There were no leads on where the sword could be. The tales only told of a warrior goddess whose job it was to pass judgment on him. Thrax went to the hidden room and looked at the egg of Vulturus.
"An invincible monster could be useful," he thought.
A shaman came in and sat down next to Thrax. "Looking for guidance before your next endeavor?" he asked calmly. Thrax just sneered. He stepped forward and took the egg off its pedestal. The shaman looked on, shocked.
"No, the egg must not be removed."
Thrax just pushed him aside and left with the egg concealed in a bag. He boarded his ship. In the back, he kept his mother's space dumpster as a makeshift escape pod. Thrax led an army to the planet of the Sentinel Knight. They split up and searched. Eventually, Thrax found someone. A gold-armored figure sat in meditation in the middle of a burnt-out wasteland.
You are the Sentinel Knight,"
Thrax called. The figure stood, and Thrax was sure this was him. He charged at him. His plan was to weaken and force him to reveal the location of Excelsior. Thrax shot the knight with his staff. During his battle, he picked up a few psychic images of Excelsior. They weren't clear. Sentinel Knight then summoned great power and forced Thrax into the space dumpster. He magically sealed it. It would take many years for Thrax to free himself. Sentinel Knight sent the dumpster off to its resting place on the moon of Earth. It sunk deep into the surface, buried under rocks and dirt. The Tenga searched for their lost leader, but something strange had happened. As soon as Thrax left their planet, no one seemed to know how to do much of anything. It was like everyone had lost their intelligence. Thrax sat in the dumpster, stewing in hatred. Once he escaped, he'd find Excelsior and destroy Sentinel Knight and bring back a glorious age of evil.